We're getting some distressing news, at least to some in the same markets who are worried about where tax reform is going. I want to explore both of these issues with Congressman Mark Sanford. He's on the Budget Committee of the state of South Carolina. First off, on what you see being played out, Congressman, on Capitol Hill right now with Neil Gorsuch, and obviously Chuck Schumer is saying, look what the Republicans have unleashed here. But it was the Democrats who unleashed this back in 2013, right, by pushing this notion that you needed a simple majority to approve cabinet appointments. They, at the time, said it was because of Republican obstinance. Be that as it may, here's where we stand right now. What do you think of this poison well argument that he's been raising?
I mean, we are where we are, and you know, the demons have already been unleashed. I don't know that you're going to put them back in the barn. And we have a hyper-partisan environment as it relates to court appointments these days. I don't think it's necessarily good. I think that the era of Johnson and Kennedy, wherein there was actually a voice vote of all things on this sort of thing, is a better place to be. But we are where we are, and I think it's essential that this nomination move forward. I think if I was a liberal, I'm not, but if I was, I would frankly be comforted by his vote, because he's a strict constitutionalist. He strictly interprets it not as one might want it to be, but just right down the middle. So I think whether you're from the right or from the left, this ought to be an appealing candidate. I'm glad to see he's going to go through. All
right, now to what Blake Berman was saying, Congressman, about how this administration could conceivably be looking at picking a number of other Supreme Court justices. 3 of the justices are into their 80s already, one late 70s, 2 actually in the late 70s. So it is conceivable that Donald Trump could change the look of the court and the complexion of that court and its political views and legal posture well into the next few decades, right?
Yeah, but I think that one of the things that I think a lot of folks from both sides of the political perspective are worried about is the way in which the executive branch has got into the role of legislating, and to a great degree the court system has done so as well. And so the idea of going back to the original mission and having a court that actually interprets the law and calls it right down the middle, as opposed to coming up again with fairly wild and broad interpretations, I think would be good from either political perspective. In that regard, I don't think it'd be a radical change in the court, but frankly going back to what it's traditionally been all about.
And as you and I have chatted in the past, I mean, picks can change. In other words, what you think is going to be a surefire conservative or a surefire liberal. Yeah. You know, David Souter comes to mind and a host of others. Yeah. Having said that, Congressman, the markets are liking on it. They see it what appears to be a win for President Trump here, and by extension, a win for an agenda that is desperate in need of a victory. Now, that's a quick interpretation. They are concerned, though, that this tax cut thing and some of the other issues, health care and all the rework, the president has indicated he might want to marry that kind of vote with a vote on infrastructure spending. On that, how do you feel? Because that gets to be dicey. That seems to push the clock back a little bit. What do you think?
I think that could well happen. I don't particularly like it. I like voting on one subject at a time. When you begin to marry disparate subjects, it gives everybody a reason to vote for it or frankly against it. And yet concrete sells in individual districts. People know that. And I think that, you know, it'd be something that would probably bring a number of Democrats on board. I don't think it's good policy. But you know, I think you're going to see tax reform move forward. I think that the whole hyperventilation that we've seen to date on, you know, the health care bill being slowed up has been just that. This is the normal legislative process in motion. I would make one last quick point here. The bill that we were going to vote on prior to that Friday had seen 17 legislative days. In contrast, the Affordable Care Act saw 186 legislative days. Medicare Part D, which President Bush saw 166 legislative days. They were simply trying to jam too much into too short a time. I think that, again, you will see a health care bill. I think you'll see a tax bill.
If we don't see one relatively soon, the health care thing, I mean, it's very possible, Congressman, that the tax cut thing gets shelved the next year, which is conceivably meaning now we don't see tax cuts. Are you afraid that's a possibility?
It's a possibility, but I believe a remote one. I think that you will see something move on the health care front after we come back from this recess. And I believe that you will see something on the tax front probably late summer, early fall. People that originally thought it'd be a summer kind of activity, I think realistically it's pushed back to the fall.
All right, Congressman, thank you for taking the time. I do appreciate it.